So welcome everybody. It's great to see all of you. Great to be together. And I'm very excited about this study. So let me just introduce our speaker. Rabbi Benjamin Altshuler is passionate about lifting up Jewish narratives. His story has taken him to many communities in the Midwest, and most recently to Metro Detroit, where he dwells with his spouse, Rabbi Natalie, and their cat, important member of the family there. Rabbi Benjamin was ordained in 2020 at Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, my alma mater. Sure, we had lots of professors in common, and is an alumnus and rabbinic cabinet member of Avodah, the Jewish Service Corps. So with that, let me welcome and turn things over to Rabbi Benjamin Altshuler.
Thank you so much. And thanks also to all of you for tuning in. I'm excited to learn with you and from you as we pursue this theme of hope. I will add that I grew up at a congregation called Beth Tikvah, the Hebrew word Tikvah, meaning hope, house of hope. And so I've always pondered, how is hope a Jewish value? How do we live out this principle of hope? Before we explore that, we should, of course, take a moment to bless this sacred moment. So if you choose to read along with me, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok v'divrei Torah. We will literally busy ourselves with some Torah. And today, our first piece of Torah might come from an unexpected source, that of Anne Frank, who wrote the following in a book that is probably familiar to you. It's really a wonder that I haven't dropped all my ideals because they seem so absurd and impossible to carry out. Yet I keep them because in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. We can, of course, appreciate the irony and yet beauty of Anne Frank's ideals, especially considering her ultimate fate and what makes her Holocaust narrative so powerful, is that she was living through a time when hope was especially difficult to carry out. And yet, in spite of her circumstances, she maintained, perhaps, a strand of hope. And that's what makes her so remarkable. I would like to put her words in conversation with some of our traditional texts. And so I've brought a number of them. We'll see how many we get through. But I'd love to look at a few. And as we do so, I'd love to hear from you about how you feel that these texts reflect hope in your own life and in your own definitions of what it means to be hopeful in a Jewish way. So first, let's look at some Talmud. I will read aloud. You can read with me. With regard to the same verse, Rava said, after departing from this world, when a person is brought to judgment for the life she lived in this world, they say to her, in the order of that verse, and they ask these questions. Did you conduct business faithfully? Did you designate times for Torah study? Did you engage in procreation? Did you hearken for salvation? Did you engage in the dialectics of wisdom or understand one matter from another? And the one that jumps out to me is the fourth one. Did you hearken for salvation? The other ones make some sense when considering the value of a life. You know, were you a productive business person and a dedicated student? Perhaps even that you would have children. But hearkening for salvation is something that surprises me, and I would love to hear from you also whether you're surprised by any of this. Because to think about the salvation of humanity is a hopeful act. To reckon with the possible future of our people, and to think about how we can contribute to a larger collective identity is one that usually goes beyond the efforts of the individual. And so to be judged on whether you at least tried, again, it says hearken, not that you succeeded, for we know that it is our obligation to engage with a task and not to necessarily complete it. And to look a little bit more carefully at that very idea, here's further commentary. Regarding the hope for salvation and redemption that beats in every Jew's heart, generation to generation, our rabbis use the word tzviyah, a word which comes from the word scout, like the scouts of Israel. The role of the scout is to use every occurrence to warn against problems and awaken the undertaking of salvation. So it is upon us to make use of every occurrence in the world, for through them salvation for Israel can spring up. A question, Rabbi Streifer, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a thought as you were looking. Can you actually go back to the last page? So I noticed it seems to me that these in some ways start from small to big. They begin with conducting business faithfully. In other words, your day-to-day life, right? What does your day-to-day life look like? And then you get to study, which is also day-to-day, but it's larger. Procreation is about legacy. And then we get to salvation, ultimately wisdom, right? But salvation, it seems to me, is you're thinking about things larger than yourself. And so I wonder if maybe if the notion of hope comes in here in our ability to think about what's larger than ourselves. Sure, it's yes, conducting business faithfully is about how you treat other people, but ultimately to see that that's part of a larger thing that we're all part of, which is the world and the need for salvation, the need for a better world around us.
Well, that is very true. And it mirrors perhaps Maslow's hierarchy, that we strive to accomplish great things, but we must first accomplish our basic needs. And only then can we work our way up towards things like self-actualization. Any other thoughts or comments on that interesting idea posed? And furthermore, when you think of hope in your life, is it something large that you strive to accomplish? Is it something that you think of in these terms? As we ponder that, perhaps another text can assist us. Let's take a look. So there's a verse from Psalms which says quite explicitly that we should hope. Hope in the Lord, be strong and of good courage. Hope in the Lord. It even repeats itself. To explore that idea, here's a commentary on that very verse from Psalms. Rabbi Chama, son of Hanina, said, "A person who prayed and saw that their prayer was not answered should pray again." Quoting this very verse, one should turn to God with hope, and if necessary, turn to God again with hope. This is a little counterintuitive. If you're not accomplishing your task with your particular strategy, in this case, prayer, why would you want to do so in the same way again? Isn't that unexpected? Shouldn't you try something new? No, you have to try again. When you struggle with a task, do you turn to prayer? And if your prayer is unsuccessful, do you remain in prayer? How does that play out in your life? Yes, Bob, go ahead.
Well, this is certainly a real problem because in most things in our life, in our learning, if we're trying to accomplish something, we don't necessarily do it on the first time or even the 9th time, and we have to keep trying. And they say, what is it to become an expert on something? You have to have done it 10,000 times. So maybe that's what you have to do here. That's a little hard to wrap my head around, but maybe that's it.
I wonder if we only become effective prayers after we spend 10,000 hours trying to pray. What do you think, Rabbi Streifer?
Yeah, I just want to push back at that though. And I don't know if this question is for Bob or for whoever, but don't they also say that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again while expecting a different answer? So where's the line between being unreasonable and having hope in expecting that something different will come about the next time around? I'm thinking about like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. How can there be hope that something different could happen? And I do have hope. So am I insane? Because I have hope that something different could happen when nothing different has happened yet in all these different times.
Is to be Jewish to be a little bit insane in that we maintain hope amid hopeless circumstances. I recently attended a talk with the Israeli journalist Tal Becker, and he suggested that there is no such thing as hope, only action and trying amid difficult circumstances. Let's turn to Alfred. What do you think?
Well, now that I've overcome my Zoom problems, jumping in, I read a long time ago that a difference between Christian prayer and Jewish prayer is that in Christian prayer, one asks for things for oneself, but the process of Jewish prayer is to align oneself with the divine. So it's a process working on oneself rather than expecting requests to be fulfilled from the great Sears Roebuck catalog in the sky.
In Judaism, we have three kinds of prayers. We have prayers of praise, prayers of thanks, and prayers of request. And when we're having an especially difficult time, I think those prayers of request become more prevalent, and our prayers of thanks and praise probably go by the wayside. But all three are necessary to commune with God. Looking through any other questions or thoughts. Let's see, I might have a couple more texts for us to look at. This one comes from Lamentations, which many people would consider not a very hopeful text. To recall my distress and my misery was wormwood and poison. Whenever I thought of them, I was bowed low. But this do I call to mind, therefore I have hope. The kindness of the Lord has not ended. His mercies are not spent. They are renewed every morning. Ample is your grace. The Lord is more my portion. I say with full heart. Therefore will I hope in him. Do you think we experience hope most explicitly at times when we struggle?
Sure, because when things are going well, we don't have to turn to hope. We just go ahead and accomplish whatever there is and enjoy the, beautiful weather and the butterflies and the rainbows. When things are not going well, then we have to turn to hope or depression.
Well, hopefully we continue to hope, even when things go well. We hope they continue to go well.
Yeah, it strikes me also that hope is some kind of a wellspring. That, the word tikvah and the word mikveh are related to each other. So, as you say, Bob, it's easy in good times to have hope for the future. It's harder in hard times. And some of what hope is that wellspring that sort of you maintain that reservoir, to use water language, that we maintain from the good times that sort of leads us through the bad times. And I also saw Susan's hand up. I don't know if she still has a thought. Yeah, Susan, go ahead. Susan, you're on mute.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I struggle with the concept of hope. In college, I wrote a paper. I remember this paper I did in college that hope was the deadliest demon in Pandora's box. And
Oh,
I think, yeah, I think when things are bad, when I'm in a really bad place, I don't know that I hope for it to get better. I think I try to settle into acceptance or just increase my meditation time and being more, closer to God or closer to the force of the universe. And to me, that kind of is different from hope.
acceptance is different than hope.
Yeah.
Placing ourselves in the control of the universe. The serenity. Maybe that's something we see more in Christian circles, the prayer for serenity. But I think there's a connection, a Venn diagram between these principles. It's a very interesting idea, Susan. As I prepared for this, I asked my wife, she's also a rabbi, so she's good to talk to about these things. I asked her what brings her hope. And she said constancy, right? The sun coming up every day offers hope, but also change. The fact that every day is something new and new flowers grow and possibility for a different circumstance remains. Do you find more hope in constancy or in the promise of change?
Promise of change.
Nice. How about others? Where do you find hope? What brings you hope? What brings you to a text study today about hope?
Am I still unmuted?
Yes, we still hear you, Susan.
Okay. I think it's just terminology. I enjoy studying with Rabbi Streifer, and I've never done a session that I didn't come away feeling I got something. So I think I'm good with hope. I may be using different terms for myself. And when there is change, I'm very grateful.
Yes, Rabbi Streifer, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking about your question of constancy versus change. And I think I find comfort in constancy. I'm the
Yes.
kind of person, I like ritual. I like to do the same things. I like to light the candles on Friday night and feel the comfort of knowing that things will be the same. But I think that there's also a stagnation in constancy. And that change doesn't change to me is what brings hope. Hope is the possibility that there can be something different than there is right now. But I wonder if I need the security of constancy to lead me to hope. That is, not unlike your Maslow's hierarchy analogy. We can't reach for what's higher if we don't have our basic needs taken care of. If I don't have the comfort of knowing that I'll be okay, then it's very hard to reach for the knowledge or the possibility that things can ultimately be better.
Right.
Hope in something better. Oh, yes, Bob, I see your hand.
In our current context, and I guess I'll apologize slightly for being so political, I hope in the change of the Prime Minister of the State of Israel. So change is the important aspect here.
Change in the occupant of the office, but also change in that individual that they can change. And all of us as individuals can grow and change, but yes, we'll stay out of politics. So to put our quotations in conversation with the quote we started with from Anne Frank, this one comes from recognizing when we're in a challenging place. Others of our quotations, pull us in different directions. Pull that one back up. How about? I wonder if Anne Frank was aware of the challenge of her time. Likely she knew exactly what was going on in the world, but her hope doesn't appear to come from feeling like she's, quote, bent low, like the quote from Lamentations, nor does it come from a place of striving for change, but simply in recognizing the kindness in other people. There's a humanistic aspect of hope. I wonder if there's anyone here who draws hope from the people they surround themselves with. Yes, Carol, what do you think?
I'm not sure that this statement of Anne Frank's is a statement of hope.
Ooh, tell me more.
She says she still believes that people are good at heart. She's not hoping for anything.
Right.
I don't believe this is a statement of hope. This is a statement of belief.
Ah. And statements of belief are different.
I don't see it as a statement of hope that things are going to be better, that, things are going to change. It's just that, okay, people basically are good at heart, and it's left up to you to decide what that's going to cause or not cause, or what's going to happen. I don't read this as a statement of hope.
Noted. Okay. Others agree, disagree?
I think that despair is something to which despair is the loss of all hope. And what Anne is saying here is certainly not despair. So it expresses a faith in humanity but it's not despair. So there has to be hope in it, because it's not a loss, it's not abandonment of all hope.
For Anne Frank to maintain belief in benevolence at a time in history when, time in European history, when benevolence was certainly hard to come by. Perhaps not a hope of change, but a hope of constancy. Rabbi Streifer?
I agree with Alfred. I think for two reasons. First, the statement "in spite of everything," it seems to me, is an ultimate statement of hope. Hope, I think, has to exist in spite of something. Hope has to exist in spite of whatever it is you're hoping to be different. So that in and of itself, to me, is a statement that I believe things can be different. And then the notion that people are really good at heart, change will only come because people decide on change. It doesn't mean that change will automatically come tomorrow, but I think the idea that people are good necessarily breeds the notion that change can come. So I do see this as a statement of hope. because she's still maintaining that kernel of belief that, like it says, in spite of everything, there's still good in people.
Hope is a response. Hope is an action. And it must then come from the source of what it lacks. Rick, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd agree that there is a lot of hope that is in the Anne Frank statement, given that we know now what she didn't know then in that moment. We know historically how that all evolved and how we place her in history, which is why we're still talking about her, 50, 60 years later, whatever it is. And so I think there's something embodied in that whole statement. And I also want to respond to the last question you threw out before Carol spoke, which was about surrounding ourselves with hopeful people. And I know I do that all the time. I go seeking the best environment that I can to support me, to find supportive people around me that give me hope that there is possibility when there might be, we might all be surrounded by a lot of darkness. So
hope can be contagious.
Yep.
Hope is a powerful thing. And I believe hope is a Jewish concept, not just because of Anne Frank and not just because of the principles we see in our tradition, but the fact that we keep talking about it is itself a hopeful idea. And so I want to thank you all for being here and for continuing to join us in hoping for a better future.
Let me say thanks to Rabbi Benjamin Altshuler for this interesting constellation of texts that you brought together and for a hopeful discussion. Thanks for engaging us in conversation with Anne Frank and with our tradition and with each other. A reminder to everybody that we're off next week for July 4th. So I hope that you have a good holiday week for those celebrating Canada Day and those celebrating 4th of July. And we will be back the week after next with Rabbi Ezra Weinberg. Take care, everybody. Thank you.